But we view this whole week as it goes together. It's celebrating Jesus, who he is, which we saw displayed, as Karina read, coming in as a conquering king. But we know he comes in and he goes to the cross and ultimately an empty tomb. And so what I want to talk about today is, what does it look like to entrust yourself to the Father? One idea that we even talk about in the child dedication is that we say that we acknowledge that children are a gift from God. And then this is true. This is kind of a mantra that we say to ourselves, that God loves our children more than we do, because God can perfectly love them. And so we fall short in how we love our kids. We want to do our best, but we know we fall short. But we know that God loves them more than we do. And so the call of a parent is that you're a steward of your children. And my first pastor always said that your parents did the best they could with the tools they had, right? Your parents did the best they could with the tools they had, and that ultimately you're entrusting your kids to God. And that there's times when that feels like a no-brainer. We were at dinner on Friday night for Bibi's birthday. Happy birthday, Bibi. Bibi's my mother-in-law. Birthday on Friday. And so there's times where entrusting your kids to God feels like a no-brainer. We were there with Tom and Lexi's, my new baby niece. She's just a couple weeks old. It's a no-brainer. Okay, we got this new baby. We're trying to keep her alive and going. And you're just you're praying for the child. You're tired. They're not sleeping. They're not eating. The eating's a challenge. And so you get what? You get desperate, right? And you're like, oh God, just please let us sleep. Oh God, please let this baby eat. Oh God, and so there's this, and just sort of even a child dedication, you're acknowledging, man, God, this is amazing. I love watching their fingers and their toes and and they kind of grab onto you with their toes. It's the greatest thing ever. And you praise God for this child. At the same table, our oldest, who's on this side of the family, is at the other end of the age bracket, got his license on Friday. So Will is driving, which is awesome. He's a really good driver, and I'm just super thankful and excited for him. But he's starting to drive, and so we're like, hey, we're going to Rancho Chico for Bibi's birthday, maybe swing by around 7. On a Friday night, he did. This was amazing. Your prayer for your child when they're 16 and driving a car for the first time without you is what? Ramped up, right? We got the Life 360, and you can track them and see how many times they pick up their phone and when they sped too fast and went down. We have all these things, right? But what? Hey, I have zero control over this, right? They're going to do what they're going to do. Now you try to train them up and help them on those things. But there is a dependence that Karina and I have discovered just on Friday that we didn't know was there before, right? You're praying for them. You're hoping hey, do the things that we know you can do. So there's times in life where when things are challenging, and then you entrust your children to God, right? And this is what we see. What struck me as we begin Easter week, that we see Jesus entrusting himself to God the Father for the good of the world. Jesus is entrusting himself to God the Father for the good of the world. On Palm Sunday, we see this celebration, this acknowledgement of Jesus and King. It's like a celebration. And so Jesus doesn't tell them no, take the donkey away, get rid of the branches, put down the cloaks. He doesn't say any of that. Jesus knew the king would come in on a donkey. They would celebrate him. They would wave branches. They would lay down their cloaks and hey, here's the deliverer. Here's the Messiah. Here's the one that came to rescue everybody. Jesus doesn't stop it. He's yes, that's me. And he, in the midst of celebration, he's entrusting himself to the Father. But Jesus also knew that Holy Week doesn't end on Sunday. It's just the beginning of it. He knew that Holy Week went to a cross. He knew the celebration wouldn't last. For Jesus, Jerusalem meant certain death. Luke 9:51, there might be a slide for it, says, when the days drew near for him to be taken up, he set his face to go to Jerusalem. This is what struck me for the past few weeks as I thought about Easter and Holy Week. Jesus knew that he was going to the cross. He knew he was going to suffer. He knew he was going to die, and he set his face to Jerusalem. And so in the Gospel of John, it just simply this account. It says that Jesus came to Jerusalem. Jesus came to Jerusalem knowing he was going to be crucified, knowing he was going to be killed, knowing he was going to suffer for the sins of the world. And it says that he set his face. He entrusted himself to the Father. Luke 18:31 says the same thing. He says, see, we are going down up to Jerusalem, and everything that is written about the Son of Man by the prophets will be accomplished. For he, this is Jesus talking, for he will be delivered over to the Gentiles, and he will be mocked and shamefully treated and spit upon, and after flogging him, they will kill him. But on the third day, he will rise. For Jesus, Jerusalem, this triumphal entry meant rejection, it meant suffering, it meant death. So we see Jesus, when things are going well, entrusting himself to the Father. When we see Jesus knowing that things are not going to go well, not go like he's not getting the big straw, he entrusts himself to the Father. He knew it meant rejection, suffering, and death, yet he set his face. He had a determination, a steadfastness, and unwavering focus on his mission to fulfill God's plan of salvation. And so what I want to ask is, like, how did he do that? Why did he do that? I want to reflect this week on the love of God that is displayed through the sacrifice of Jesus. How did Jesus, when time was going well, entrust himself to the Father? How did Jesus, when things were going terrible, entrust himself to the Father? How did Jesus, when things were just kind of common, when they were ordinary, when they were normal, entrust himself to the Father? And how can we do this? And this sort of idea of entrusting himself to the Father, where we can learn from, is culminated or like most clearly seen in what Lou read in Luke 22:42. It says he knelt down and prayed, saying, Father, if you are willing, remove this cup from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done. I am going to entrust myself to you. And so again, as we move into this Holy Week, what I want to reflect on today and this week is the love of God that's displayed through the sacrifice of Jesus. That we would, as we see Jesus entrusting himself to the Father, as he marches into Jerusalem, as he's at the Last Supper, as he's crucified on the cross, as he resurrects, that we would be able to see and know the love of the Father through Jesus the Son. And the second thing I hope it does is that it compels us to follow and live in the way of Jesus, to entrust ourselves to the Father. That's what we're called to do. What does it look like to entrust ourselves to the Father when there's celebration, when things are going great? What does it look like to entrust ourselves to the Father when things are not, when there's challenges, when there are the so-called crosses that we have to bear? What does it look like to entrust ourselves to the Father in those times? And then also just, we don't always live in celebration and challenge. Most of life is just in the common. It's in the ordinary. Yet we see Jesus live an ordinary life and entrust himself in every way to the Father. And so how does he do that? How can we pray, not my will, but yours be done? The first thing that we see in Jesus is that he was a man that was immersed in the story of God. He knew God's story. He knew the story of the world. To understand our smaller stories, we need to know the bigger stories. And we see it in verse 39. It says, and he came out and went, as was his custom, to the Mount of Olives. And the disciples followed him. And when he came to the place, he said to them, pray that you may not enter into temptation. And it says, and he withdrew from them about a stone's throw and knelt down and prayed. You'll know this if you come around Crosspoint a bit. I get stuck on things. And so this week I was getting stuck on that. It says that he came out. I was like, well, what did he come out of? Right? Where he had been was the Passover dinner. He had been at the Passover meal. And the Passover meal was a yearly reminder of who God was and all he had accomplished for his people. God's Old Testament people had rebelled against God, and then they were enslaved in Egypt. They were taken captive in Egypt. But God comes in, and he warns Pharaoh, who won't let his people go, and he rescues his people. He delivers them from slavery and death to life and freedom and worship in the promised land. This is what Jesus was walking out of. He's walking out of a meal that commemorated, like, hey, God is one who rescues, God delivers. This is the story of God. This is the story of the Bible that we talk about every week here at Crosspoint. That God created all things good. It was flourishing. It was peace. There was shalom. It's, when we get a glimpse of when things go right, like, yeah, that's how God intended things to be. But the story of the Bible talks about that things aren't that way, that there was a distrust of God. There was a rebellion of God. Satan tempts them and says, like, hey, did God really say? And so sin enters the world. There's disorder, distrust, disunity, what we all experience. But the rest of the Bible is God's story of him rescuing his people, him redeeming, him buying back his people, his promise to return and set all things right. And so Jesus would have been coming out of this meal, and he would have been looking at the cross, and he would remember, my Father is the one who rescues. My Father is the one who redeems. My Father is the one who restores. We see this come out in the cross. The famous words of the cross that most people have heard, Jesus cries out, he says what? My God, why have you forsaken me? Right? That's all he says. He's quoting Psalm 22, because what? Remember, he's immersed in the story of God. He knows the story of God. He knew the rest of Psalm 22. The rest of Psalm 22 goes like this: but you, O Lord, do not be far off. O you, my help, come quickly to my aid. Deliver my soul from the sword, my precious life from the power of the dog. Save me from the mouth of the lion. You have rescued me from the horns of the wild oxen. I will tell of your name to my brothers. In the midst of the congregation, I will praise you. So Jesus can stay on the cross and say, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why? Because he knows that God is the one who what? Rescues, delivers, redeems, set things right. He's the one who will rescue him. And what does God do? Rescues him. He resurrects him. He redeems all things through him. He knew the story of God. It allowed him to go through suffering. It allowed him to go through challenges. And he prays like, hey, I want that for you too. It's interesting how this passage is sort of framed by Jesus' prayer for the disciples. In verse 40 and 46, it says the same thing. And it says, and he came to the place, he said to them, pray that you may not enter into temptation. Verse 46, and he said to them, why are you sleeping? Rise and pray that you may not enter into temptation. What's temptation in the Bible? The temptation of the Bible is that people would deny and distrust the goodness of God. That's what Satan tempts us with. Deny the existence of God. Distrust the goodness of God. That's what happens, as I said, Satan in the garden. Did God really say? Jesus in the desert, he is tempted by Satan to deny God and his goodness. Jesus said, no, this is who my God is. This is who my Father is. I will worship God always. What he is praying when he says, I pray that you don't enter temptation, he's saying, don't allow the trials and challenges of life to be ruinous. Don't let it be devastating to your faith. Don't let challenges, don't let hard things, don't let confusion, don't let the challenges of this world ruin your faith. Don't be tempted to distrust and deny God and his goodness. It's what allowed Jesus to face a cross and pray, my Father, not my will, but your be done. So for us, in the midst of life's challenges, in the midst of life's difficulties, in the midst of life's confusion, in the midst of the commonness of life, sometimes you guys ever just get bored with life? Like, yeah, just another day, another day, right? We need to remember this greater story of God in both celebrations, as we see on Palm Sunday, and challenges as we look to the cross and the common things of life, Jesus immersed himself in the story of God. He knew God created it good. He knew that sin broke everything, and he knew that God would redeem and restore all things, and he trusted God in the midst of it. Leads to point 2. We see in verse 41 to 42 what allowed Jesus to entrust himself to the Father. He knew the goodness of God. He knew God as his Father. In the middle of Jesus' most troubling time, what does he do? It says he prayed. The word for pray there, it says that it means that like he was drawn or he was pulled. He went to the Father. Not that I want bad things to happen to our kids. I've talked about this in different, maybe they have a challenging thing in a sporting event, like Alana has a rowing thing, and she must have hit a screw or something yesterday, and she got like a blister on the bottom of her foot. The immediate thing she does is call Karina. What does she do? Calls her parents. Like something bad happens, let's call. Notice she called Karina. Like, I'm working on it. But in the middle of it, he entrusts himself. He prays. He goes to his Father. He says he knelt down and prayed in verse 41, saying, Father, if you are willing, remove this cup from me. He entrusted himself to the goodness of God. It says that he knelt down and prayed. The normal posture of prayer in the Old Testament is that they would stand and hold their hands out. This idea of Jesus kneeling communicates an intense supplication. I think the women's group talked about supplication this week and intercession and praying and asking for God. He was in trouble, and he went to the Father. This is how Jesus always addressed God in prayer. He addressed him as Father. They didn't do that in the Old Testament. And we can learn from him in the midst of his prayer, in the midst of his trouble. He entrusts himself to the goodness of God, and he goes to him in prayer, and he prays to him. We see two things. He says, Father, if you are willing. He calls him Abba. That's what he encourages his fathers. When he teaches us to pray, he says, pray like this, our Father who art in heaven. The idea of father means somebody that's of somebody that's intimate, somebody that will love you. A father protects you. A father, especially in that culture, was somebody that you revered, and you would submit to their authority. You knew they were good, and so you wanted to do what they said. I love the song that we sang coming in here. It says, oh, the faith that I would know you as a child and as a friend. And then he says, safe, secure in you forever, I pour out my praise again. That's Jesus' posture towards the Father. I'm safe and I'm secure in you. He knew the goodness of the Father. James Edwards, in his commentary on this, says, the God to whom Jesus prays is not a cosmic force. He's not an aesthetic or moral sense or a feeling of sublimity. He says, this God is Father, his Father. His Father is near, his Father is hearing, and his Father is compassionate. This prayer both models and testifies that Jesus does not face death alone. He does not face death unknown, and he does not face death unloved, but that he and his disciples may appear to God as Father in their hour of doubt, fear, sorrow, and need. We all have seasons and times of doubt and fear and sorrow and need. And he's saying, hey, turn to the Father. Turn to the one who is reigning and ruling over all things, which is where he leads. This is the second thing. So he prays to him as Father, and he prays to him as the one who is sovereign. It says, Father, if you are willing, and then he says, remove this cup from me. If you are willing, remove this cup. One commentator says that Father claims God personally. And he says, if you are willing, honors God to be the forever sovereign. How does he pray? If you are willing. I know you are sovereign. I know you are reigning. I know you are ruling. I know you have different plans than I do. You're the sovereign over all things. I will trust you. If you are willing. There's a posture of humility and trust to God's goodness. And he says, remove this cup. The cup in the Old Testament, what would be a metaphor of what lies in store for somebody. whether good or bad. Like, this is your cup. This is your cup to drink. This is what the future holds for you. And he's saying, if you're willing, remove this cup. Yet not my will, but yours be done. Because Jesus knew that the cup meant his death, that he must suffer. And he eventually will. But even on the cross, what does Jesus pray? He says, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. No matter what comes about, I trust you. I know you're my Father. I know you're good. Tim Keller, in the book that we're reading in the men's group, which kind of started all this thoughts, said, unless we are profoundly certain God is our Father, we will never be able to say, thy will be done. He says fathers are often inscrutable to little children. Inscrutable, I looked it up, means that they have a hard time understanding why they do what they do. Okay? Like, there's one thing when you have the 4, the 5, the 6, 7, 8-year-old, like, why? And then they get a little older and like, well, why can I only have my phone for that long? Or why can't I stay out later? Or why can't I go there? Or why can't I do that? Right? They're like, hey, they don't fully understand what a parent is trying to do. A 4-year-old cannot understand many of his father's prohibitions, but he trusts him. Only if we trust God as our Father can we ask for grace to bear our troubles with patience and grace. Jesus knew God as Father. He trusted in his goodness. So he can pray, if you are willing, Father, if you are willing, remove this cup. Yet not my will, but yours be done. So we can go through life's challenges. We can entrust our Father by immersing ourselves in his story, by entrusting ourselves to his goodness as our Father. And then the third thing that we see Jesus does is commits his life to the will of the Father. He says in verse 42, remove this cup from me, nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done. Jesus lives a life of love and obedience. Jesus came and he says, I came to do the will of my Father. I came to do God's will. People wanted Jesus to do a million things. You ever feel like people want you to do a lot of things? Right? Everybody wanted Jesus to do something. But he would say, I'm locked in. I came to do the will of my Father. Satan himself said, don't do the will of the Father. Jesus says, this is why I came. Jesus freely entrusted his life to his Father. He's not passive. He's not powerless. He's in complete anguish. He's sweating blood. And being in agony, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat became like great drops of blood falling down to the ground. How can he trust God in the midst of the most horrific thing that anybody could ever go through? He knew the story of God, and he knew the goodness of God, and he knew why he came. He knows why he came, and he knows the cost. At the Passover meal, which we will celebrate in a minute in communion, Jesus, it says that he took the bread, and he says that he broke it, and he says, this is my body given for you. And it says that he took a cup. He says, this is my blood poured out for the forgiveness of sin. Jesus knew this is why he came. He came to bring life to a dying world. He came to rescue, to redeem a world affected by sin and brokenness. He came to a world of humanity that says, not your will be done, God, but mine. I'm going to deny you. I'm going to disregard you. I'm going to do things my way. It's the essence of sin. But Jesus comes and brings salvation. He says, not my will, but thine be done. And Jesus leaves the garden. He's arrested. He's mocked, he's ridiculed, he's scourged, just like he said he would be done. And ultimately he's crucified and killed for the sins of the world. He was obedient to the Father because of the love for us. John 15 says, "Greater love has no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends." Jesus was obedient to the Father for the love of his people. And he displayed it by laying down his life. Why? Because he loves us. Because he sacrificed for us. Because he wants us to experience new life. Jesus ultimately laid down his life for God's glory and for our good. And when we know this about Jesus, when we know that's what Jesus did for us, that he was born as a baby, that he set his face to Jerusalem, that he was laid bare naked on a cross for our sins, it compels us to follow him, to live lives of love, to live lives of sacrifice, no matter what people do or respond to us in any way. Tim Keller in the prayer book put it this way. He says, "If we can't say, 'Thy will be done' from the bottom of our hearts, we will never know any peace." We won't have peace. He says we will feel compelled to try and control people and control our environment and make things the way we believe they ought to be. Have we tried this? It's what everybody's trying to do. We want to control people. We want to control our environment. I love technology. I love innovation. We're just trying to control everything. He says, yet to control life like this is beyond our abilities, and we will just dash ourselves upon the rocks. It's futile. Right? I mentioned earlier when he got his license. I got a sister that has, their kids are like just ahead. So if our kids are on the old end of our family down here, our kids are on the young end of our family from St. Louis. And so if you guys know, like the Life 360 thing, right? Which is a great tool. Like it's helpful for us. Like, okay, like going a little fast here, like it helps navigate, and that brings some, like, we can't control any of it, right? Do you think we have much control of a I don't even need to talk about my kids. Any of us. At some point, you've raised them, you've done everything you can, and you're like, hey, go, and we can't control it. It's futile. Ask my mother-in-law. She's like, there's probably some things I'd like Brian to do a little differently. We can't control life. We're called to entrust to the one that can. And until we do, we'll never have peace. We'll never have rest. We'll never have comfort. John Calvin added, he says, to pray thy will be done is to submit not only our wills to God, but even our feelings, so that we do not become despondent, bitter, hardened by the things that befall us. The reality of the world is things are not going to go the way that we want them to. Things will not go the way that we intend them to. Christians can just be honest about that, right? But we know the whole story. We know that we love and we serve and we find our rest in a God who promises to rescue us, to redeem us, to restore all things when he returns. And so we entrust ourselves to him. How do we know he loves us? He sent his son for us. How do we know that he will rescue us? His son died on the cross for us. How do we know that he will restore all things? Because he said he'll return and set all things right. He's our Father. He's sovereign. We can trust him. And so my hope, my prayer is that you would understand the story of God. Maybe it's something that you just heard, and then we come around and we're at Easter and this time of year. But my prayer is that whether it's for the first time or somebody that's believed the story over, that we just keep returning to the story of who God is, his goodness. My prayer is that you would understand and see God as a good father. that we would entrust ourselves to the goodness of God. And if we know those two things, then we can aspire to live lives of obedience to God and love and sacrifice to others.